On the afternoon of September 14th, 2019, a postal worker in a residential neighborhood noticed that mail had been accumulating in a mailbox for several days. The address was a single-family home on a quiet street. The postal worker made a note and continued her route. The house belonged to a man named Thomas Garrett. He was 62 years old. He lived alone. He had worked as an accountant for a local firm until his retirement 3 years prior. Neighbors described him as polite but private. He kept his lawn maintained. He took his trash to the curb every Tuesday morning. He was rarely seen outside beyond these routines. The postal worker returned the following day. The mail had not been collected. She knocked on the front door. No answer. She looked through the front window. The blinds were partially open. The living room appeared undisturbed. A newspaper sat on the coffee table. A lamp was on. She made a second note and reported it to her supervisor. On September 16th, a wellness check was requested. 2 officers arrived at the residence at 2:34 p.m. They knocked on the front door. No response. They walked around the perimeter of the house. All windows were closed. The back door was locked. They returned to the front and knocked again. One officer called out, "Silence." They contacted the property management company listed in the county records. The company confirmed Thomas Garrett was the sole occupant. They did not have an emergency contact on file. The officers made the decision to enter. The front door was unlocked. They opened it and stepped inside. The interior was clean, organized. The living room had a couch, a television, and a bookshelf. The kitchen was to the right. Dishes were stacked neatly in the drying rack. A coffee mug sat on the counter. The officers moved through the first floor. They called out several times. No answer. They climbed the stairs to the second floor. There were 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. The first bedroom was empty. It appeared to be used for storage. Boxes were stacked along one wall. The second bedroom door was closed. One officer knocked. No response. He opened the door. The room was dark. The curtains were drawn. He reached for the light switch and turned it on. Thomas Garrett was sitting in a chair in the corner of the room. He was facing the wall. He was fully dressed. His hands were resting on the armrests. He was not moving. The officer approached and spoke his name. No response. He placed a hand on Garrett's shoulder. The body was cold. The officer stepped back and radioed for medical assistance. Paramedics arrived at 3:02 p.m. They confirmed that Thomas Garrett had been deceased for an estimated 3 to 5 days. There were no visible signs of trauma, no signs of forced entry, no signs of a struggle. The body was transported to the county medical examiner's office for autopsy. The medical examiner determined the cause of death to be natural causes, specifically a cardiac event. Toxicology results showed no substances in his system, no medications, no alcohol. The examiner noted that Garrett's position in the chair was unusual but not impossible. People experiencing sudden cardiac events sometimes remain seated. The body can stay upright depending on how the muscles contract. Investigators returned to the house to complete their report. They examined the second bedroom more closely. The chair Garrett had been sitting in was positioned directly facing the wall. There was nothing on the wall, no pictures, no markings, just blank paint. The chair had been moved from its original position near the window. Drag marks were visible on the carpet. The marks indicated the chair had been pulled approximately 6 feet. One investigator checked the rest of the room. The bed was made. The closet was organized. A desk sat against the opposite wall. On the desk was a calendar. The last entry was dated September 10th. It was a reminder for a dentist appointment scheduled for September 12th. Garrett had not attended the appointment. The dental office confirmed he had not called to cancel. On the nightstand beside the bed was a pair of reading glasses. A phone charger. No phone. Investigators searched the house. They found Garrett's cell phone in the kitchen. It was plugged into a charger on the counter. The last activity on the phone was a text message sent on September 10th at 8:17 p.m. The message was sent to a contact listed as Margaret. The message read, "I'll call you tomorrow." Investigators contacted Margaret. She was Thomas Garrett's sister. She lived 2 states away. She said she had not received a call from her brother. She said the text message was the last communication she had with him. She said it was unlike him not to follow through. He always called when he said he would. Margaret was asked about her brother's health. She said he had no known medical conditions. He did not take any medications. He had mentioned feeling tired during their last phone call a week prior, but had attributed it to poor sleep. She asked if there was anything unusual about his death. The investigator said the circumstances were being reviewed. A detective was assigned to follow up. He re-examined the scene photos. He focused on the chair facing the wall. He requested the original position of the chair be documented. A neighbor was interviewed. The neighbor said he had seen Garrett taking out his trash on the morning of September 10th. He said Garrett had waved. He said that was the last time he saw him. The detective reviewed Garrett's financial records. No unusual transactions. His bank account showed routine deposits from his pension, routine withdrawals for groceries and utilities. His credit card had not been used since September 9th. A charge for a hardware store. $12.36. The detective visited the hardware store. He reviewed the transaction. Garrett had purchased a small package of picture-hanging hooks. The store clerk did not remember the transaction. The detective returned to the house. He checked the walls in every room. No new pictures had been hung. No new holes in the walls. The package of hooks was never found. The detective continued his investigation. He interviewed additional neighbors. Most had only seen Garrett occasionally. One neighbor, an elderly woman who lived 3 houses down, said she had noticed his porch light on at unusual hours in the days before his death. She said it would be on at 2 or 3 in the morning. She said this had happened at least twice. She had assumed he was having trouble sleeping. Another neighbor recalled seeing Garrett standing in his driveway on the evening of September 9th. The neighbor had been walking his dog. He said Garrett was staring at his front door, just standing there. The neighbor said he had called out a greeting. Garrett did not respond. The neighbor assumed he had not heard him. He continued walking. The detective returned to the medical examiner. He asked if there were any other findings. The examiner reviewed the file. He noted that Garrett's clothing had been examined. There were no tears, no stains, no foreign material. His shoes were clean. The examiner said rigor mortis had been consistent with the estimated time of death. He said there were no defensive wounds, no abrasions, nothing to suggest any physical altercation. The detective requested access to Garrett's computer. It was a desktop model in the home office on the first floor. A forensic technician examined it. The browsing history showed routine activity, news websites, email, online banking. The last login was September 10th at 7:43 p.m. Garrett had checked his email. There were 3 unread messages, all promotional content. He had deleted 2 of them. The third remained unread. The technician checked Garrett's sent folder. The last email sent was on September 8th. It was to a former colleague. The email thanked the colleague for a lunch meeting earlier that week. The colleague was contacted. He confirmed the meeting. He said Garrett had seemed normal. They had discussed retirement, hobbies, nothing unusual. The colleague said Garrett had mentioned he was thinking of redecorating his bedroom. He had not elaborated. The detective reviewed the scene photos again. He examined the wall Garrett had been facing. He requested a second visit to the property. The house had not yet been cleared. He stood in the bedroom. He positioned himself where Garrett had been sitting. He stared at the wall. There was nothing remarkable about it. Standard off-white paint. No texture, no variations. He took measurements. The chair had been positioned exactly 4 feet from the wall. He checked the closet again. Garrett's clothing was arranged by type, shirts together, pants together, everything on hangers. At the back of the closet was a small cardboard box. The detective had not noticed it during the first inspection. He pulled it out. Inside were old photographs, family pictures. Most were from decades earlier. He sifted through them. At the bottom of the box was a single photograph that appeared more recent. It showed a wall, just a wall, similar to the one in Garrett's bedroom. The photograph was dated on the back, September 7th, 2019. The detective bagged the photograph as evidence. He contacted the photo lab. He asked if the image could be analyzed. The lab confirmed it was a standard print from a digital camera. The metadata indicated it had been taken with Garrett's cell phone. The detective checked the phone again. The photograph was still in the camera roll. There were no other photos taken that day. No other photos taken in the days following. He returned to Margaret. He asked if her brother had ever mentioned photographing walls. She said no. She said it was strange. She asked what it meant. The detective said he did not know. He asked if Garrett had ever exhibited unusual behavior. She thought for a moment. She said that during their last conversation, Garrett had paused mid-sentence. She had asked if he was still there. He had said yes. He had apologized. He said he thought he heard something. She had asked what. He said he was not sure. The detective filed a supplemental report. He noted the photograph. He noted the neighbor's observations. He noted the picture-hanging hooks. He submitted the report to his supervisor. The supervisor reviewed it. He said the findings were interesting but not indicative of anything criminal. He said the cause of death had been established. He recommended the case remain closed. The detective made one final visit to the house. He sat in the chair. He faced the wall. He stayed there for several minutes. He tried to understand what Garrett might have seen, what he might have been thinking. The wall offered no answers. He stood up. He left the house. He locked the door behind him. Thomas Garrett's sister arranged for the house to be cleared. She hired a service to remove his belongings. The chair was taken to a donation center. The photograph was returned to her with his other personal effects. She kept it, but never looked at it closely. The house was sold 4 months later. The new owners reported no unusual findings. They repainted the bedroom, a light gray. The case file was archived on October 2, 2019. The official determination remained death by natural causes. No additional investigation was authorized. The photograph was stored with the evidence but never re-examined. The package of picture-hanging hooks was never located. No further questions were raised.